Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and I'm so excited to bring you a books recommendation video with books by black authors with black characters and sometimes, and more often than not, about the black experience. I'm doing this because it's Black History Month in the US. I know I'm not American, but I'm doing it anyway. And last year I did this where I recommended 20 books to you guys in a video, and I thought, why not just make part 2? So I'll have a link to the video I did last year down below, but if you wanted 20 more book recommendations, stick around because we're going to have books released in 2020. We're going to have non-fiction, middle grade, adult, novels in verse, plays, poetry. We are trying to cover as much as we can in this single video, but this is not an exhaustive list. There are so many more black authored book recommendations out there. These are just some that I have read and I really recommend to other people. Let's get down to the books. The first book I want to talk about is When Life Gives You Mangoes by Corinne Getton, and this is a middle grade book that is set in Jamaica, and we're following this young girl who doesn't remember what happened last summer, but as she goes throughout the summer this year round, things are starting to come back to her piece by piece, and I think this was just a beautiful setting of Jamaica and Jamaican foods and culture a little bit, but it also really captures what it's like to be a child, to play as a child, but also not knowing everything as a child. And it also deals a lot with a certain heavy theme that I can't discuss without giving you spoilers, but I'll have content warnings for all of these books down below for as many as I can think of in case you are worried about the content that it's going to be discussing. But yes, it's a really good middle grade that I really recommend, and it can start some very great conversations. Up next we have a thriller book, and that is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, and I really enjoyed this thriller. We're following someone who has a sister who is a serial killer, and she keeps covering for her sister and helping her sister out, and she's trying to unpick why. It's set in Lagos, so we get to see a little bit of what it's like to be an educated woman in Lagos, because the person who we are following works in a hospital, and some of the things that she has to deal with and navigate as being a woman in Lagos, but also the family dynamic in this one is so interesting. We have 2 siblings and a mother, and their family dynamic is very conflicted and complicated, but it has a lot to do with their family history as well. And yeah, it was just so interesting seeing what could make a sister relationship the way that this one is. It also talks a lot about beauty standards and black beauty standards, because the person that we're following feels very ugly, whereas her sister, the serial killer, is very beautiful, and that theme comes into play a whole lot. I really recommend this one and just thought it was a fantastic thriller. It's got some dark humor to it in certain places, and it reads so quick. You absolutely whiz through this book. The next one that I have not stopped shouting about for a very long time is Your Silence Will Not Protect You by Audre Lorde, and this is a non-fiction collection of essays and some of the poetry that Audre Lorde has written, and this one is very important because it's incredibly intersectional. It's about how your silence will not protect you when it comes to activism, and why it's so important for black women to speak up and speak for themselves and fight for themselves. But it also talks about intersectionality, as in why white feminists should be caring about black feminism as well. It talks about the LGBT plus community, because Audre Lorde was a lesbian herself, and why it's also important to fight for LGBT plus rights, and also how it can benefit black men to be supporting black women cases and such. So she's really made this as intersectional as can be, and she's also talking about her personal life and personal experiences throughout this one, which I thought was just a very nice touch. Audre Lorde knows how to present her arguments, and she does it impeccably well. Definitely recommend this book. Then we have a play that I recently read, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry, and this follows a poor black family who are living in an apartment that is entirely too small for them, and they've been without money, living payslip to payslip for so long. But recently someone in their family has died, and that inheritance is going to come through, and it's about what these people are going to do now that they have money. And I think it's just very interesting to see the racism that emerges within the economy and also systematically, and you can see how all of these people's lives have been shaped by the fact that they have not had money in a long time and that they're about to get money, and it really changes their character and their personalities in certain ways. And I think it was a brilliant commentary on what money can do, but also why this family has been struggling for so long. And it does touch on racism very, very well, but at the core of it there's also some moments of joy. This family have a lot of banter and it's just lovely to see at places, so I think it's got a subject matter that's hard to deal with in this play, but it does it superbly well. Up next we have a collection of poetry, and that is My Darling from the Lions by Rachel Long, and this poetry collection is split up into 3 different parts, and each part deals with a different theme. So we've got some to do with blackness, but we've also got some to do with family and love, and I think these poems are pretty easy to understand, but they've got just enough of the beautiful poetic language and metaphorical language for anyone who wants to dig deeper into their poetry too. And I think it unpicked, you know, having a black family and the black experience pretty well within these poems. I feel like it's hard to talk about poetry collections, but I really did enjoy this one, and the more that I think about it, the more that I really appreciate it. So it's definitely one of those ones that is going to leave you thinking for a very long time. Now it's time for a novel in verse, and I just had to recommend Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, and this one follows a plane crash that happened in real life and how that plane crash devastated things for the Dominican Republic community and the Latin community. And in this particular story we follow these 2 girls who live in different places. One lives in the Dominican Republic and one lives in the USA, and their father dies on that plane crash, but they did not realise that they had a sibling until his death. And it's about what happens with this complex family dynamic, but also it's showing the different ways in which they are both grieving and how that grieving process can be so complex and so isolating, while at the same time showing the shared grief that some of the people are experiencing because of so many people passing away on this plane crash. I really liked the setting of the Dominican Republic for half of the story and how it talked about the differences in culture and experience. It was just a brilliant portrayal, and it also touches on the theme of sexual assault a little bit. So it brings so much to the story, but it's written wonderfully and it's just chef's kiss, perfect. Another novel in verse that I just had to recommend was The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. You may have heard of this one before, and it's following a Jamaican Greek boy who grows up in the UK, and it's about his experience as a gay man and also just navigating being gay and black and from all of these different nationalities as well. And he grows up and he does fall in love with drag and the drag community at university, and that is a big part of the second half of the story. But it's also just about his whole life and going through all of these experiences with friends and with family, trying to settle on his identity and how his identity is transformative and changing all of the time, while he's also dealing with things like homophobia and racism that he has to experience and react to as he's growing up. And I just thought it was a beautiful story. It's got its difficult moments, but the end was making my heart so warm, and it's just such a beautiful celebration of who people truly are that I can't do anything but hope that other people find happiness from reading this book as well. Up next we have Slay by Brittney Morris, and I just think this is a story that a lot of people can learn from. So while it might not have been the perfect book for me, I still recommend it to so many people because it has so many good things in it and so many important lessons to learn. But without further ado, let me tell you what it's about first. So in this book we follow a black teenage girl who has created this game called Slay for other black people, and in it they can just be authentically themselves, and it's got a lot to do with black history and culture in the game, and she loves it. But now that the larger world has cottoned onto her game, and when a specific incident happens that directly has to do with her game, people are calling her game racist and exclusionist because it's only for black people and meant to be a black safe space. But throughout this book there are a lot of discussions on the black culture. It kind of deals with black elitism, colorism, and also just loads of different questions that teenagers today face when it comes to talking about blackness, and also microaggressions. And I feel like it unpacks a lot of these things, so I feel like lots of readers can learn from reading this book what it might be like to be a black teenager growing up in the world today. And it's just so beautiful to see that game Slay because it just sounds so fun. So I think this is a very good book for learning but also for a bit of enjoyment as well. Switching to non-fiction, I do want to recommend Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel Acho, and this one is basically a response book. He gets asked questions by people about the black experience and he answers them. It's that straightforward, it's that simple, and Emmanuel Acho has a talent for explaining things in a clear and concise way. It's a great anti-racism book, and I think it's a very great place to start with anti-racism books, especially if you haven't read that many, because he also gives you other resources of ways that you can go further and do more to be more of an activist, but also places that you can go to read more, to watch more, to learn more. And I appreciated the fact that he gives you so many resources in a single book. I also liked that he did admit when he didn't know enough on a subject, and he points you towards people who can help you learn more about that subject. He doesn't talk about things that are outside of his own experience, because oftentimes people think the Black experience is one particular experience, but the Black experience is a diaspora. There's a lot of different Black experiences. Being Black and British is not the same as being Black and Caribbean, or being Black and Afro-American. So he does acknowledge that, and he is a Black man, not a Black woman, not a Black non-binary person, so he accepts that he's not those things and passes them on to the next person, and that is exactly how you should write a non-fiction book, in my opinion. So I thought this was a great place to start. Another play recommendation, and I really would like to recommend The Lamplighter by Jackie Kay, and this is a play about British slavery in history. So I feel like a lot of the media that we see about slavery is American focused, but this one is dealing with the British slave trade, and it was fantastic the way that it's written to show the individual experiences that each of these characters are having, and the individual and personalized suffering that they're going through with slavery, but also unifying the voices to show how the suffering from slavery is a shared experience at the same time, and it shows the shared experience and the individual experience so well, balances it so well, and it also is based a lot on fact and talking about some horrific experiences that truly did happen. So it is quite heavy and emotional as a play, but I thought it was fantastically well written and done, and I appreciated seeing one about British history. Going to young adult fiction here, I'm going to recommend Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles, and this one is a book about police brutality. At some point I thought we had too many police brutality stories, but if 2020 taught me anything, it's that we clearly do not have enough, and this is about an African American experience where his brother is murdered due to the police, and it's about his experience with that, with the court case happening, but it also focuses a lot on media because his brother has become a hashtag now, and it's talking about how the media has almost separated what is really important about the story. And I thought it was a very interesting focus to have it focus on the media and how the media is processing things, and then how he personally is processing things or not. And it was a very interesting story. I think it did things very well, and it's a bit of a quicker read than, for example, The Hate U Give, which I often see it compared to, but I still think it's just as relevant and just as important, and recommend it just as much. Taking it back to a Black classic, I would like to recommend you Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. In my previous recommendation video, I recommended The Colour Purple, and Alice Walker was very much inspired by this story. So this one is about a woman who wants to find love, simply wants to find love, and she goes through a variety of relationships that are good for her, that are bad for her, or something a bit more complex in the middle. And it's about her as a Black woman and her experiences with love, but also with community and racism. And it also has such a big connection to nature. It's very much a journey of her transforming over time, and you can see the nature and the descriptions of that going with the transformation. It's very hard to explain this book, but I found it very moving and still very important. It's also Southern Patois, so it's written in Southern Patois, which I know some people find difficult in terms of reading it physically. I struggled with that, so I switched to the audiobook, and I really recommend it for anyone who's struggling with the language of reading it, because it's still a story worth getting through, and with the audiobook you just hear the accent and it's telling the story in such an immersive way. Definitely recommend this one as well. For a little bit of Afrofuturism, I want to recommend Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi, and this one follows Ella, who has a ability that she calls her thing, which means she can manipulate elements. She can do a whole load of things. She has an incredible power, but her power is very dangerous. It can ruin a lot of things, so she tries to hold it within her, but she is angry. She has a lot of anger at the racism that is in her neighborhood and that she sees experiencing and Black people happening all over the world. But she has her brother as well, Kev, and Kev gets imprisoned for a crime, and it really digs deep into the racism that is within the imprisonment system. And the problems with the imprisonment system overall as well, and I think it handled that area of things in terms of being black and in prison and imprisonment, and also black anger and black violence so incredibly well. It talks a little bit about police brutality at the beginning, but also it talks about what needs to change and how black anger can be wielded and how black anger is not a bad thing. And yeah, it was really blowing my mind on the discussions to do with blackness, anger, violence and pain, and where that is all coming from and what can truly be done or not done. The end image of this book has stayed with me for a very long time, and I really think this is one that more people should be reading because it says a lot. It says a lot of things that I would love to say, but it says it in a way that is better worded than anything I could possibly say. Going back to non-fiction for a little bit here, we have Don't Touch My Hair by Emma Dabiri, and this one is also called, in the US, Twisted by Emma Dabiri. They're the same book, so don't worry, it's the same content, and this is a non-fiction book that has to do with the history of black hair and black hair culture. There's a lot to be learned here about black hair, but at the same time we're following Emma Dabiri herself because she is a black Afro-Irish woman, and she talks about her experiences in Ireland as a black woman, and she also talks about media representations of hair, the economy when it comes to black hair products, and so much more. She touches on black male hair a little bit, and it goes into so much, and it shows how black hair is so important to black women and their history and how they are perceived by the rest of the world. I thought this book was genius. It did a very good job of showing when she was talking about her own experience and making the distinction between the facts that she's presenting, which I always think is something important in non-fiction, and there's just so much good stuff to learn here as somebody who has black hair myself, but also I think for people who don't. I also want to recommend another Afrofuturism one, which is called The Black God's Drum by P. Djeli Clark, and this one follows a girl who wants to get onto this airship, and she's trying to do that, and she discovers this whole ploy that's going on and she gets involved with that, but she also has the goddess Oya always whispering in her ear and wanting to be part of her. And I thought this was a brilliant book. We've also got a black disabled bisexual character as well, so it's got some intersectionality, and I just love the progression of this story. And this world was so interesting. It was very much history combined with the future, and it was blended in such an iconic way. We get to see black characters speaking in their own vernacular, and I appreciate seeing that in books so much because we don't get to see it too often. And I just thought it was a fantastic story with a beautiful transcendence of history, present day, future, and also mythology, black mythology. And yeah, really enjoyed reading this one and would recommend it. Another non-fiction one that I want to recommend is 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. I know that lots of people are familiar with the film, but I also think the book is very much worth reading. It's very old, okay? It's written in the 1800s, so the language is a bit harder to read and it's a bit slower paced, but then again, it's his life. Like, do you need a fast-paced life? No, you don't. And it is his experience as being a free man and then being captured for 12 years and living as a slave. And his story is heartbreaking. It's his true story, and I don't even have words for it. It's just horrific to read about. But equally, because this is real life, there are lots of characters, people that he comes across in life, and their paths intersect for a little bit of his journey, but not the entirety of the journey. And you see their suffering and you see their pain, but you don't get to see the answers, because that's what it was like as a slave. You got to meet other people and you got to interact with them, but they might be sold to someone else, or they might be ripped away from you, and you would have no closure of knowing what happened to them later. And I think that's what struck me the most, because oftentimes in films and other portrayals of slavery, you get a complete story, but this one is so fractured and fragmented that you can see how the effect that fractured displacement and fragmentation can have on the lives, aside from and as well as the suffering that they're having physically and mentally as a slave too. And it was heart-wrenching, but I also think it's such an important book. On a lighter note, I would also like to recommend Mangoes and Mistletoe by Adriana Herrera. This is a romantic new adult novella, and we're following these women contestants for a little bit of a cooking competition, and they all go to Scotland, and it's kind of like the Great British Bake Off, but it's a different version, and it's great, and they're all cooking, and we follow these two women who get paired together. They're both black Latin women, and a crush starts to develop. It's a lesbian romance, and they've also got to unpack a little bit of their relationships to their own cultures, because I think they're from different places in the Caribbean. And yeah, they both have different opinions on whether or not Caribbean spices should be infused and included in their food for the competition. It was very sweet, it was very romantic, and it was also a little bit steamy here and there. I want to recommend to you I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. You also might have heard about this one before, and it's a non-fiction memoir of her life, but it's not her entire life. This one really spans from when she was a child to when she was a young adult, and Maya Angelou has been through so much and had such a variety of different experiences. It does talk about racism because that is part of her experience, but I just feel like it's also a lot about Black family and Black relationships, and it's just, it was such an immersive and interesting read. And yeah, it was a story, but it wasn't actually a story, it's her life again, so it was very impactful, and I feel like it's an important one to read. And then last but not least, I really want to recommend you Felix Ever After by Kacen Callender, and this is the story of a young adult who's trying to work towards getting a scholarship for this art school that he really wants to get into, and he is a trans teen, and one day when he walks into his school, he sees an exhibition that is dead naming him and also posting a lot of pictures of him pre-transition, which is awful, and he wants to find out who has done this. And at the same time, he starts to get cyberbullied, and it's a book that is just so down to earth and so realistic. It is talking about the trans experience, and it's talking about the Black trans experience, and it's also talking about how his relationship to gender is transforming and changing, and it's not just a static decided entity yet. And as well as all of this, it's just such a real situation of teenagers, because the romantic relationships in this one are messy and they're just so realistic to what teenagers can experience, and have adults can have it too. But I just felt like it was a very realistic portrayal of teenagers. It was very interesting to learn more about the trans experience, and also interesting to learn more about the Black trans experience. Those are 20 books that I really recommend by Black authors that are about the Black experience. Please let me know if any of these interest you, or recommend me a book by a Black author about the Black experience that you would like more people to read. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!